I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. Yeah, I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. Yeah. Then I hit her with the slammer. Shawty say she like my country grammar. Yeah. Then I pour the lean into the fountain.
Now, Si, you touched on the front end and the back end. Walk me through the front end and the back end that an artist receives when they perform.
Okay, definitely. It's a little bit of a confusing term, right? Front end and back end when it comes to money, right?
Right.
So typically, we call front end is the money that the artist receives as a commitment to a show. So I'm a promoter, and let's say I wanted Trinidad James, and he's $40,000. The front end would be the $20,000 that I have to pay to reserve Trinidad James to perform at that location, that venue, at that specific time with the specific writer, 10 songs, 5 songs, whatever that may be. At the day of the show, the road manager usually goes to the venue and says, okay, we are in your city. We have posted all of the IG or whatever the social media you want us to do. We are performing 3 hours from now. We do need the back end before he gets on stage. And the back end is the remaining balance. So in the industry, it's called front end, back end. The front end is specifically needed because from the front end, you're gonna pay for the travel typically. You're gonna pay the per diems. You're gonna pay for any of the kind of supporting costs that you have to get to that venue. It might be you have rehearsals with the dancers. You may have to do some stuff for the DJ. You have security that's going on the day off that probably has to be paid the day off the show, and you might be performing the next day in that city. So there's all of these kind of front end costs that front end money or front end is covering. And then the back end is what you receive at this show.
So why don't artists know how the money should be split before they even get to it? Like, based off the artists that you work with, are they knowledgeable about how the money works, or are they just kind of figuring out when they get to the table, when they get to the door?
Typically, when it comes to me, an artist would know specifically what their portion of the monies is. It's really based on your contract. So I'll give you a perfect example, right? Let's just use easier math. Let's just say that the show is 100,000. So we receive 50,000 up front. Let's say that is your agreement. You receive 50% of your show, your front end is 50%. Then we know that, okay, management may be 25%. So 25% of 100,000 is 25,000, right? So if we receive 50,000, we know that we have management's fees already covered in that first 50,000 that we receive. So we got 25,000 left. Off that, we may have travel. Let's say travel is another 5,000. So we know we've got 20,000 left. Let's say now, wait, between DJs, production, your dancers, you might have a full band. Let's say we know that costs 25,000. That means that we know that there's a deficit of $5,000 that we need. We should have 55,000. So we know that once we get the back end, we owe another 5,000 to cover the cost of it. We know that the artist is due 45,000, and we also know from that 45,000, SI is probably going to reserve 15,000 for taxes, so that artist can walk away free and clear of 30,000 on a $100,000 show, with his taxes being reserved. So if you have a good business manager that's on the front of your booking agent, understands what the detail of the contract is and gets all of the reports from the booking agent, he's got all of the reports from the travel. He's internal, so he's got all of the costs, your internal costs, your security, DJs, lights, action cameras. He's able to really determine easily how much you should make per show. That typically doesn't happen because there's a lot of artists that don't have business managers. They have road managers that help as much as they can, divvying out monies that are on the road. But unless you have headquartered someone who understands the logistics and how this all works, there's always going to be arguments, and we've seen this many a times. an argument, an artist is always upset because they feel like they should have made more money. They should, oh, I don't know how I can have $100,000 on a show and I only got 30. Like, what's going on? And they don't have anyone to actually give them real accurate numbers or reasons why this is where it is. So, of course, you have that structure in place in first, and it's a shit show if it's not, and we've seen this many times.
So why do you feel like artists get in trouble with their taxes so much?
The reason why artists get in trouble with their taxes is, of course, they don't have a business manager if it's reserving taxes. Okay. So they don't have an idea of what that is. In addition to that, all of these promoters, if you work for a larger firm like a CAA, an ICM, and they're going to send you a 1099 for all of the performances that they have paid you over the year. And you have to then deduct all of your expenses away from that. But if you don't have an accountant, you don't even know what your expenses are. And more yet, you're not even filing taxes. You just get a tax form and say whatever.
So what can an artist write off when it comes to touring, when they have like the dancers coming on, the DJ? Like,
every cost that's associated with that tour is deductible. The IRS says anything that's related to your active trade or business is deductible. So if it goes even further down to your cell phone bills, it goes down to per diems that you're giving to your staff. It goes down to every single penny that you have to pay that's specific for the production of what you do. Your assistants, the only thing that, of course, we've talked about are luxury items that don't have anything to do with your active trade or business. The jewelry, the big Bentleys and all stuff. But even though if you have a car and it's part of your business, you can still deduct depreciation on that car. You could gas, mileage, and all this other stuff that is involved. You just can't deduct $500,000 because you spent $500,000 for it. It's over. There are strategies around that. And of course, again, that's having a very solid accountant that understands IRS regulations.
So if you don't have an accountant, especially when you're starting off, what are some of the different softwares that are available to you to help manage the money that's coming in?
I would say that there's no replacement for an accountant. But what I would say is that there is some really good software out there. I would recommend two, Xero, xero.com. I'd recommend FreshBooks. And what they do, and they do very well, is they allow you to port all of your bank transactions into the software, and it happens as a sync, so it's happening every single day. Now, if you do have someone who can categorize those expenses, so for instance, you're in your FreshBooks or your Xero, and they see Starbucks, and they go, okay, we had coffee, we're gonna put that in meals. Okay, I see that we wrote a check to BJ, and BJ is the DJ. So let me just, I just rhymed, right? So he's the DJ. So I know that let me code this to DJ costs. And if you have someone who can help you categorize your expenses as they're happening, then that will be worthwhile. Now, of course, a business manager would be thinking broader on like with what you should withhold. Is this show even feasible in terms of before you even took the gig? Can your cost sustain this? And all of the other systems and processes that they've put in place.
So what are the different types of deals that are out there for artists or producers to sign?
The different types of deals it's so vast now. It's like painting a canvas. There's large strokes. And I'll talk about a few of them and just kind of the majority, like the ones that you typically see. So going from the least popular now is like the singles deal. Right? A singles deal is basically, hey, label believes in you as a one-shot Charlie, right? You got one in the chamber. We're not sure about any more, right? And what they do with that is they say, okay, we'll give you $100,000 advance for this song that we can see is percolated and we like, right? And we'll give you an advance and we'll give you another $100,000 that we'll use towards marketing and getting the song from where you've taken it really like all the way out there, right? And so a singles deal is like, we want to participate on your bookings, your tourings, your ancillaries, and or we want to have a lion's share of your publishing until we're recouped from our 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever the money that they put out there. Usually when you see a singles deal, there's an option. Like if the song is so great and they believe in you, they'll have an option for another single or an album, right? Those don't really happen anymore. I think Empire in Atlanta has a really good platform because, as you know, they were a distribution company. They collected your iTunes streams, your Spotify, your Pandora, all of this stuff. But now they're a label. And what they do is they create all of these kind of creative deals that say, you know, we believe in you. They just did one on Drew Hill. They just did one on, you know, him, which was a major deal, right? But they're nimble and they're a small company, but they can do a 360. A 360 is participating on all type of income. Wherever you get income, we want a percentage, or we just want a percentage of your ancillary, which is just your anything that you do outside of your booking and touring. There's all these different ways that you can do it. Empire is the most flexible. Major labels, the capitals, will want to, depending on your attorney, but most of them want to participate on a 360. We want different portions or different percentages of your merchandise. We may say, you know, just give us 5% of your net merchandise revenues, give us 50% of your publishing, give us maybe 15% of what you make from your touring and your booking and touring. And so there's different, when you have a sync license, or you know, your song is going to be a television or it's going to be somewhere else, give us this percentage. So your attorney is actually representing different percentages on a 360. It's not 50% across the board or something like that. So typically you're going to see a 360 deal. You're not going to see you know, singles deals anymore. A very popular singles deal was Let Me Whip.
Yeah.
You know, that was what I forgot the guy's name.
Silento.
So that was a kind of like a singles deal, and with an option to do another single like that. That's not an album deal.
But
right?
Rax was YC Rax. That was a single deal too, right? Was that an actual distribution deal?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain.
Because
it could be.
Because he didn't come out. What? He might have. I didn't hear nothing. But he got Rax, and that was it.
But that one specifically was a singles deal through Song Publishing, which was a company out of New York as a record label. So that's what you typically see now. The canvas is so wide because a lot of these artists are doing a lot of the work before it even gets to. There's no real A&Rs these days. You know, you've already have 1 million followers before, or you've got zillions of streams on your SoundCloud.
You established yourself before the label gets
established, so that by the time you go into a label, whether it's independent or not, you typically have the opportunity to negotiate all these different types of revenue streams, how you want the person who's about to back you to participate. So let's talk about independence, right?
Yeah.
Independence. And let's talk about Chance the Rapper.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about that a little bit. Because there's this weird definition about independent. If you guys know, Chance the Rapper always talks about, you know, this independence, right? But one of the things that we need to talk about is that his management team is, part of his management team is the son of the person that created Groupon. Right? So you're talking about a team that has access to a large amount of capital, right? So let me ask you something. If I knew that I had access to $500,000 to do my college tours, to do to work in urban radio, to have my music on all kind of channels, which labels usually provide. If I could pay the same PR firm that a label would pay for me and support for me, if I can work with radio promoters that the label usually supports for me, but I can do that independently, is it really independent?
No.
It's just what you're doing is you're saying, okay, no different from taxes, right? I can either defer the taxes or I pay it now. you're paying it now. That's all you're doing. Is that really independent?
No.
You know what I mean? It's either the label's gonna pay for it and you're gonna reimburse them, or I have a bag.
Yeah, you're gonna pay for it yourself.
You know what I mean? And let's really talk about it. And that's really what's interesting about Atlanta. And we're not gonna even ducktail off, but I wanted to kind of like make this point. People talk about Atlanta being the hub of music, right?
Yeah.
Here's my question. We've been around, everybody knows about BMF, right? Everybody knows about the distribution of drugs in Atlanta and how big it was. People understand that Atlanta is the busiest airport in the world because of the location it is to not just coastal, but how it's easy to kind of like, you know, go from anywhere. And 80% of this country can get to their destination from Atlanta, 80 on one flight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even before airports, we were transportation hubs. This is where a lot of the trains would then pivot and move to the north, the east, the west, the south, right? So the drug industry in Atlanta in the 90s was super huge, right? This is a reason why drug dealers, doughboys, they had enough discretionary income to support artists. There's no dispute about that. But also when BMF fell, there was still a lot of drug dealers, doughboys in Atlanta. Why do you think Atlanta has the hub of urban music? It's because there was enough people that had bags to support artists and friends that they believed in. That's it. If Atlanta, if the same circumstances happened for Boston or Chicago or North Carolina or Louisiana, which it was in Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
That was a hotbed.
Yeah.
This is the reason why the music was able to be so accessible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't that, music is definitely organic, but you also have to have cash in order to distribute it. Whether you're having boxes of CDs and you have enough money to have people stand out of clubs in Atlanta, North Carolina, Florida, Louisiana, Tennessee, and get the buzz for if you have a street team, that costs money.
Yeah.
Right? I hate the fact people say Atlanta is this hotbed of music. Atlanta is, as a byproduct of having a lot of discretionary doughboys, has created this industry, for better or worse. For better, we're part of it.
Right.
And so that's just one of my kind of like one of the rants that I have to like make sure we talk about. I just don't know why. It's just in my heart. It's just in my heart.
As now back to what we were talking about earlier. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of being signed to a label?
I think the advantages, disadvantages of being signed to a label, it's really based on where you want to go, right? For a label, let's talk about a label. With a label, they're going to advance you, they're going to give you an advance, they're going to give you a record label, they're going to give you a recording budget. They're going to, based on the fact that they're going to have multiple acts on their channel, they're going to be able to say, well, you know what, if I'm Motown, you know, I'm not sure if this is fact, but let's just say Future's on Motown. So Quan can feature with Motown, with Future, because they're both on the same label. It's a very easier conversation to have, and there's recording budgets on both sides. The label will take care of that portion. So there's more synergy in order to have features. In addition to that, when people think about major labels, Capitol, Sony, you have to remember that they're not only music, they're also entertainment. So when they're looking for placement on television, for commercials, people are coming to them. You're going to actually get placements, not because you're looking for placements, but because there's this opportunity to have placements on these shows. So it helps you kind of fan out your exposure, your brand, so much better or bigger than you could do with it being independent. All the things that we talked about being independent, you actually have to pay for, you know. But there's other larger overarching relationships that you can't have if you're independent. Like, you know, if you're Sony and you're making a movie, Sony Movie Inc. company can speak to Sony record label and say, you know what, we need a rapper to be in this new Marvel movie, just as an example. Oh, here's the artist that we have on our roster.
Right.
Pick one. And now this artist is not now known more for
Being an artist.
being an artist. I mean, these are relationships that have happened for Common. These are relationships that have happened for Ludacris. This is relationships that happened for T.I. These are relationships that have happened for these larger acts because they had a label that it was able to expose them, and they also had A&R, and they had a good team around them to expose them to these other opportunities. Independence, not so much.
Well, since we do have different streams like SoundCloud, Instagram, people have different ways of getting their music out there. What's the best advice you can give to an independent artist when they're starting off to make sure that they're being compensated for their music? Or their music not being taken away from them?
I think for an independent artist, in order for them to receive their revenues, I think they should also register, and it's very inexpensive to register to ASCAP or CSAC or BMI in order to collect their royalties. It's not hard to register for Sound Exchange, not hard to sign up for MediaNet. It's really understanding where the streams of revenues come from, and then making those relationships and filing the application fees and making sure that monies are being directed to you based on your efforts, right? Not very hard to do. You just have to be aware. Of course, you know, Empire helps you and collects if you want to be distributed on Spotify, on iTunes and Pandora and other channels. YouTube is the same. If you're going to be on YouTube, Empire can handle all of that. It's just understanding the agencies that are there to collect monies and making sure that you register for the agencies in which the monies are going to be collected.
So just something as simple as going to the website and registering?
It says much is going to the online, but I think even you have to dig deeper than that. I think if you're an artist, photographer, creative, musician, if you don't know your tools, then there's really no reason for you to be here. You know what I mean? I think you should explore. I think there's super dope conferences. A3C, which is going on right now, is a perfect example. They have over 300 people on panels. It's not hard to get the intelligence that you need. I think there is another channel that I think that artists should look at. It's so crazy how YouTube, as an educational tool, not like just looking at music videos, but also, I mean, if you put in, you know, how do I set up royalties as a YouTube find, you just find all of this detail and this information that you can find. There is four of my favorite learning, not softwares, but online learning educational websites are Udemy, Udemy, Skillshare, Creative Live, and lynda.com. If you sign up for $25 a month on any one of those, and say music industry, publishing, you'll have 12-hour classes with like PDFs and everything, but you have to absorb yourself in anything that you're gonna do. You gotta put your hours in, you gotta put your time in, because you should never be an artist in any form that doesn't have a general idea of what everyone does in the industry in which you're in, or you're going to be taken advantage of. You know, you got to know your tools, and so that you can do the best things for you. But those are 5 cheat codes. Just those websites, YouTube, that can just tell you exactly the things you should be signing up for, and how to register for those things.
We forgot one website.
Pardon?
You forgot one website.
What is the website, sir? Please tell us.
You forgot to say Young Millionaire's Mind.
Young Millions,
because pretty soon we will be introducing our own educational videos on how to start your own business, also as well as how to do your accounting for your businesses, setting up LLCs, being able to get with different consultants, things like that. So I have a lot of things like that coming out for Young Millionaire's Mind next year.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be part of that?
Absolutely. But now with you saying that, I want you to look to that camera right there and tell people if they want to get in contact with you, how can they reach you on social media, email, or website?
Okay, so the best way to reach me is through, Instagram now, right? Everyone just, IGs, my IG is Cy Gray, SYGRAY, but better than that, and this is really sad, I don't know my phone number. I don't know if anyone does this publicly, right, on your show. I'm putting my phone number out here, guys. Okay. So this is my real number. It's 770-766-0095. So just text, don't call, because you never know, it could be a dinner or something. And if you text me with this hashtag, then tell me the hashtag.
YMM.
YMM, Young Millionaire Minds. That's what it stands for. I just want to let you know I'm in the presence of greatness here. But if you text that with that, then I know where it's coming from and I know how to treat you. I don't want to be like, hey, who's this? I'm not answering that. Hashtag that, text me, and I'll help you with any resources I have.
All right, and if you want to get in contact with me, you can hit me on Instagram and Twitter at @BlameItOnShad. Make sure you check out the blog at Young Millionaire's Mind on Instagram, and don't forget to go to the website www.youngmillionairesmind.com.
I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. Yeah, I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. I'm just too lavish. Yeah. Then I hit her with the slammer. Shawty say she like my country grammar. Yeah. Then I pour the lean into the fountain. All these racks on me, I feel like stunner. Shawty thought I was flexing. Yeah, I know she did. Till she seen me pull her with the flag. Catch me off in Lenny Square, I be all in need, man. I just wanna hit the mall and play, cause I got racks in my pockets now.